because I just don't think about it. But Brad is behind the camera and is making me do this video. So today we're staking our tomatoes because they're getting big and they're starting to fall over. So what I've done is Brett brings home these pieces of wood. I just drive into the ground pretty close to the base of the tomato plant, probably about an inch, inch and a half away from it. And then I have this one, this is grass, but yeah, about an inch away from it. And then I use, you can use about anything. I use boat anchor rope because you can get a lot of strands out of one piece. So I just cut a piece of that, and I cut a strand big enough to loosely tie my tomato plants to the stake. You want to make sure it's loose because as they grow, the nylon tie won't interfere with them growing up the stake. And as I stake them, I can see that I need to prune them. And the reason you prune your tomato plants is to get rid of, Fred is joining us, to get rid of extra limbs, because you want, once they start to flower, you want all of the energy to go into producing tomatoes. So I'll prune off, like if there's any close to the bottom. This one doesn't really have any close to the bottom. This one's a crazy one. Let's do this one because he's crazy. Now these are my sweet 100 cherry tomatoes. See, you can see all of these limbs. They're just taking up energy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I couldn't find my pruners, so I'm using set cutters. You can use your fingers too, they come up pretty easy, but you want to make it clean, so you're just going to snip them off at the base. All of the extra limbs at the bottom, so it's clean. He's got a lot. He's even got one coming way down here. And you might think, oh, this is a lot. It's not, because I want lots of tomatoes. So then I'll go through and kind of look and see. You can see where the flower is. You don't want to go above the flower. You want to kind of trim below it, because that's where you're producing, that's where your tomatoes are produced at. And there's one over here that's got a start of a flower. This little one right here. You can see this flower's going to start there, so I'm not going to trim this one off. But this one here, he's just kind of hanging out, so he's leaving. Because I want my tomatoes to produce good. And I'll do this with all my variety of tomatoes. And as they get bigger, I'll prune less, but I'll do the suckers. The suckers are the ones that grow in between the main branches. Like this guy here, he's a sucker. He's sucking all the energy, so you just kind of snip him off. As you can see, he's looking already better because he doesn't have all that extra garbage. And as it grows and stuff, and I notice that there's not any flowers forming on a branch, as long as it's kind of lower than the flowers, I'll snip them off, just because I don't want extra weights and wasted energy on the tomatoes.
Now I know the answers to this, but maybe the question will come up. Pruning all them limbs off, how does it produce more tomatoes?
Because the energy is focused on producing fruit versus growing greenery. So the less, you still want greenery because that's how they get their nutrients, the sun. But more energy will go into growing fruit because it's got less energy wasted on growing little limbs and stuff. Hold on, there's another little sucker. You have any other questions? Because I don't know what else to say.
So what are the flowers that you got in between your rows?
Oh, these are marigolds. Marigolds are great for keeping pests, as far like bugs, off of your plants. And they're pretty good for just about any variety of plant. And it'll also deter rabbits and other rodents from getting in your garden and eating all your stuff, because they smell awful. I don't like them. Britt does, but I think they stink. And that's why the animals don't like them, because they smell really bad. So I've planted marigolds between all of my tomato plants and my pepper plants. I still have to get them between the beans, but I wanted to wait until the beans came up, so I made sure to get them in the right spots. So far the beans look really good. Haven't had any issues. We do have some issues with bugs down close to this fence line down here. Some of the marigolds are eaten off. But if you look, so if you look at this marigold here, they have completely eaten the leaves off of it. This is a pepper plant here. See how they've like kind of not touched the pepper plants as much because of the marigolds. That's what they do. These guys, don't look at them, they're pretty sad looking. But I did get some 7 dust. I'm gonna get down here and get them dusted just to prevent the bugs from eating them. It looks like it might rain tonight, so I might wait a little bit and see, because I don't want to dust and then it rain and wash it all off.
Now, what about Fred in the background? Are chickens good for in gardens?
No, he's eating my corn. Fred! Go. Go. Go somewhere else. Go. What are you doing? You can't eat my corn.
So how far apart is all the vegetable plants?
Oh, goodness. So each plant, each species needs different amounts. As you can see, the tomatoes are further apart than the peppers and the beans because tomatoes need more room. So I think the tomatoes are, so I don't measure like with a tape measure for the most part, like 2 of my foot lengths apart. So I did heel to toe and for the rows. Not only just to make sure they were adequately apart, but also so I had room to plant the marigolds and be able to maneuver in between the rows for harvesting. Now when you do buy tomato plants and stuff like that, or seeds, it'll tell you on the packet or on the tag how far apart things need to be. And if you don't have that, just Google it. It's pretty easy. I believe it's 36 inches for the tomatoes. The peppers, I believe, are 18 inches. And the beans are like probably, I think my bean rows are probably about 18 inches apart also. Yeah. And then corn, potatoes, we did potatoes. I got them in kind of late, so fingers crossed. Potatoes, they need lots of room, so they're like 3 feet apart. That way, as they grow, you can mound more dirt on them, because as you plant potatoes, you plant them deep, and you keep mounding dirt as they grow. That way, there's room for them. The corn, you don't need to plant it. Oh gosh, corn's real close together. I've got 6 rows of corn, but they're kind of, I utilized my space the best I could. So I got 3 short rows at top, and then 3 long rows at the bottom, just because the way our garden is tilled is like a funny angle, so I had to kind of be creative with how I planted the corn. But the corn is pretty close together, and we're also going to like succession plant, so as corn grows, we're going to plant more in its place. That way we have a continuous crop of corn as long as we can. Same with the beans, you can do that with beans also. We'll see how these do, but you can succession plant beans also. But I planted bush beans because of the space. You can do pole beans, which climb, like cucumbers or squash and stuff like that. And if I did pole beans, I probably would have planted them against the fence. That way they have something to climb onto. I do have 2 varieties of cucumbers that I planted along our fence that are doing wonderful. I'm training them right now to climb the fence. That way they're out of the way and they're not all over the place. And on our compost, we have some volunteer pumpkins. We're just going to leave them go and see what happens. There was some in the garden area and some field corn from when we had the pigs in here, but I pulled those out because I don't want those in my garden.
Why wouldn't you want them in the garden?
Because I needed that space for sweet corn. because they were growing over like where I planted the sweet corn. And pumpkins and viney stuff, they take up a lot of space. That's why when you see pumpkins, like if you go to like a pumpkin patch in the fall, they're in giant fields, like cornfields, because they need so much room to spread out. And we don't have that room. Like, I could probably plant 10 or 12 pumpkin plants in this garden area, and that'd be all I could do, because they just need so much room to grow. But we can look at the cucumbers. Alright, so I've got two different kinds of cucumbers. I have a Eureka pickling cucumber and a silver slicer. So one is for like eating. You can pickle any cucumber, but the silver slicer is better for eating. It's a burpless cucumber, so you don't get the indigestion and gas from it and makes you burp. That's why they're burpless. And then the other one is a Eureka pickling cucumber that they produce like nicer shaped cucumbers for pickling, so I can make pickles. So I've got a lot of them actually in the last day have started to flower. So this one wasn't quite long enough to train on the fence. And how you train them on the fence is, you see this little guy here, this little tendril. This is what helps it climb. See, it's on this blade of grass. If you break it off, it's okay. They'll grow new ones. But the way I train them is I just take my cucumber plant, gently kind of start wrapping the leaves to kind of give it some support through the fence. And as it grows, these little tendrils, here's one that's not wrapped yet. So it'll start to wrap itself around the fence like that. And as it grows, it'll grow higher and higher. So I'll have basically a wall of cucumbers. They didn't have flowers yesterday because I was out here messing around, tenderling them, but a lot of them are starting to flower, which is great. I was kind of worried about this location because we get so much sun back here all day long and it gets pretty hot. But the tree coverage does help kind of filter the sun so it's not quite as intense. So we'll see what happens when it comes like mid-July, August. He lost a tentacle. See this guy, he's growing straight up like nobody's business on some grass. But he's not quite long enough to fit to the fence. Let go. Not quite long enough yet. But I come out here every day, so I'll just keep checking. This guy's really long. Ooh, he's got lots of flowers. Look at that. Yay for cucumbers. Now, I've got to be extra careful because I'm kind of doppy and I could potentially just ruin this dang cucumber. Here, he's going to be good. We'll get that. Kind of help him out a little bit. Here, I'll start climbing. And then this is the last one. He's already kind of figured it out. He's got one leaf already underneath there. He's got his little tendrils kind of out, so he's just about big enough, but it looks like this one will probably, since it's closer to the fence, will just tendril itself, so I won't really have to worry about weaving it into the fence. Oh, do you want to show them our compost pumpkins? Here's our compost pile and our beautiful compost pumpkins. They are gigantic, so hey, compost is great for pumpkins for sure. This is a mixture of bedding from the chicken coops, the pig pens, grass clippings, any organic material you can compost. We do vegetable scraps if we don't feed them to the pigs. Lola likes certain vegetables, so do the boys. Eggshells. We don't do citrus because citrus doesn't break down very well. But any sticks, old mulch, like any organic material you can throw into your compost. And you don't really have to do much, but you just kind of pile it up and leave it go. And it breaks down itself, and it's great for refreshing your soil. We did this because, well, as you can see, our dirt is it's pretty rough. There are lots of earthworms, which are good. So that tells us there are nutrients in it, and they do help aerate the soil. But it's pretty tough soil, really clay-like. So in the fall, we'll spread this compost out into the garden after everything's harvested, and then next year when we till it in, it'll make the soil richer. So every year you do that, it makes your soil better. And if you can even, if you already have compost that's already broke down, you can add it to like the holes you dig for your plants. Put a little compost in there. It's great for fertilizer also.